If you've been following A Jar of Pickles or my business for a while, you know that I am a big fan of slow and steady growth. I think that way too many people try and work way too fast and burn themselves up, and I get so sad when I see people giving up on their small business dreams and journeys because they burn out way too fast. I think there are a lot of things that need to scale slowly with the growth of your business, and here are some of the things that scaled with my business as it grew instead of me jumping into things before I was ready. First, money or how much I was spending. So A Jar of Pickles grew very much as a hobby business. And when I say hobby business, I mean like really hobby business. Like if I had no time, I didn't touch it for like months. I think also partially because I'm Asian and I'm very frugal, it made it so that when I started my little Etsy shop, I was very unwilling to spend money on the business. This kind of led me honestly to do some ridiculous things. Like I handmade each of the envelopes that I shipped with my card because I didn't want to buy like a stack of envelopes. But I kind of twisted it as like a DIY envelope for a while that was like kind of cute with washi. And it was like a whole thing that was fun for a little bit, but I stopped doing because it was definitely not sustainable as I was growing. The point of that story is really to illustrate that I was so nitpicky about every dollar that I spent on the business. Every tool that I thought I needed to buy like way back then was so carefully calculated, and I remember like driving to Michael's like 3 times in 1 week so I could use that 50% off one item coupon so I could build up the tools that I needed in the cheapest way possible. And fast forward now to years and years later, I spend thousands and thousands of dollars every single month. But that mindset that I had from way back then is something that I still keep. Every single purchase that I make now for my business, I spend a very long time thinking and asking myself, do I really need this? Will I use whatever I'm trying to buy 6 months from now or a year from now? The question really is, I ask myself, is how is the return on my investment going to be if I buy this tool or this product or hire this person? I talk to a lot of business owners that are a little bit in over their head because their overhead or what they're spending every month running their business is much higher than the profits that they're making, which means that they're kind of operating at a loss, which means that they're very stressed to try and sell their products as quickly as they can. I like the way I did it in terms of spending my money because it was very low pressure, which meant that every time I was marketing my product and trying to get it out there and trying to be creative, I was like purely creative, purely doing it for fun, which I think led to a much more authentic and much freer version of creating A Jar of Pickles versus a version where I felt a lot of pressure to make up the money that I had spent. It's kind of like if you're starting a business that kind of requires investors, people have kind of advised you to take less investment money because then you have to make your investors or board happy, etc. Because I was not willing to spend a lot of money as I was growing, you can probably imagine that means I had very limited options in terms of the products that I was making and selling. There's not a lot of products that require very little money to kind of get started, and greeting cards was something that was super cheap for me to start, and that's why I started there. I literally bought a stack of cardstock with my 50% off coupon at Michael's, and then I took the cards to FedEx to print on their nicer printers, and then I even used their paper cutter there for a while before I invested and bought my own. However, as Pickles grew and I started to sell more and more cards, I was then able to take the profit that I was making and make the next biggest product, which I think was stickers, and then enamel pins, and then keychains, and then now I had enough profit to even make plushies. Basically, I only ever made products as my profit was scaling. If I wanted to launch something as cool and as big as plushies as I did, bye Fred, I can't even imagine 8 years ago me like figuring out the logistics, the money, the costs, everything to do with plushies. Still to this day, I have dreams of making even cooler and even more niche products, but I know that I'm not ready yet because I don't want to give up that much of my profit to invest in a new product category. I'm pretty strict about spending only a specific percentage of my profit into new products because I like to have a buffer, and I really think that scaling slowly is the way to go. Because my products started out so cheap, like greeting cards are very cheap and very easy to make, it also meant that my risk was very small. Even if you work with a larger manufacturer or printer, the minimum order quantity that you need to buy cards is extremely little compared to something like plushies. This meant that even after I graduated from FedEx and found a bigger printer to print my cards, I only really needed to buy like, I think it was 25 or 50 cards to sell before I could make a new card design, right? Versus the plushies that I now have, which required thousands as a minimum order quantity. My tolerance for risk has definitely gone up as my business has grown. This is also partially strategic because of customer base. It is a lot easier to get a customer to spend $4 or $5 on a greeting card than $30-something on a plushie. As I was figuring out my marketing strategy and acquiring new customers and trying to prove to customers that I was a legit brand and I made legit products and I cared about my customer service and I cared about my product quality, it was a lot easier with greeting cards to convince them that this was true than something as big as plushies. So as my company grew, the ease in which I could acquire customers grew as well. And with that, it should be said that I think my customer base also aged with me in the sense that when I started my business, 8, 9 years ago, I had very little spending money, but now that I'm older, I have more spending money. So I think those customers that started out with me is the same. They've grown up, they've gotten married, they've gotten promotions, and now they have more money to spend, and now I have bigger products, more expensive products for them to buy. So I was also going to talk about outsourcing. So I find a lot of small business owners that don't want to do a lot of things. Bookkeeping, accounting, logistics, marketing for Instagram, and they're looking for someone that they can hire to do these things for them. I am a firm believer that you should at least learn the basics of all the things in your business first, and I think this applies when you're first starting out. It's only that as I've gotten bigger and I can't handle anything anymore, I now kind of realize that I have to find people to outsource, I have to find people to hire, or else I just can't do it all myself. But for a very long time, I was the only one doing everything. I wasn't paying for anyone to do anything, which, okay, also isn't wise to some degree. But my point is, I think my frugality and my stubbornness of wanting to keep my overhead as low as possible, wanting to scale very slowly, was very good in this sense, because I now have very clear expectations for each of the roles that I hire that I wouldn't have had the operations and the logistics to figure out way back then. The last and the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about was expectations. I have coached a lot of small businesses since I opened up my coaching calls, and what I have found for every single small business person that I've talked to is that the number one thing that will burn you out, or the number one thing that will make a small business owner quit, is having expectations too high. I think that might sound a little bit depressing when I'm just like, just keep your expectations low and you'll never be disappointed, but that's not really what I mean. Everybody knows that in the day of social media and Instagram, it's very easy to see somebody's wins and not somebody's road to get there, and that's really, really true in small businesses. I don't think that we can say that enough. I'm not saying don't set goals. I'm not saying don't work towards your dreams, but those dreams have to be realistic where you're at. I'll give you an example. I started this YouTube channel like 2 months ago, and honestly, for all the metrics that I'm used to on Instagram, which is my social channel of choice, my YouTube is getting very, very low engagement, very low views, very low comments, whatever. Is it disappointing? Yes. Obviously, sometimes I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, why am I spending so many hours editing this video if like barely any people watch it? However, I also do not let myself dwell on my YouTube numbers too much. I know that I'm only beginning. I know that I'm really awkward on camera, and I know that like my editing is not very good, etc. And I fully believe that in a year or two, if I'm still doing this, it will be a lot better and I can have some kind of expectations then. But I barely started. I'm such a beginner. I cannot expect to have like growth or engagement the way that I have on Instagram, which is something that I've been working on for 8+ years. That's the same with my store, right? Nowadays, if I don't hit certain revenue months or weeks or days or whatever, right? Like I am disappointed, but that's because I've grown my business to a point where it's consistent and I can have these expectations. If I had expectations 8 years ago to make a weekly sales number, to make a sale a day, etc., I would have been sorely disappointed, which meant that I would have given up sooner. That's actually why I coach my coaching clients that every time they start something new, they should actually not look at how well it's doing for at least a couple of months before they kind of sit down and decide to give up on something. It is very, very easy and very tempting to think, I spent 10 hours on this reel, I spent 10 hours on this YouTube video, I spent 10 hours on this product, therefore I should get something out of it when you're first beginning. But I implore you not to think like that, because it will make you burn out faster. It will make you give up on your small business faster, and that is something that nobody wants. My expectations, just like everything else I mentioned in this video, money, risk, products, grew slowly with the growth of the rest of my business, and I think that's really kept me afloat and really kept me going. If you're just starting out in your small business or wherever you are on your small business journey, I would love to hear, is there a part of your small business that you feel is too big relative to where you are at in your small business? Are you spending too much money outsourcing? Are your products bigger than your marketing budget or strategy? Are your expectations too high and you feel very discouraged every week? These are important questions to ask, and I would love to help you if I can. Leave a comment below and I will do my best to help you, or find me on Instagram where I share a lot of small business behind the scenes and tips on a daily basis.